Good afternoon, everybody. Uneducated economist here. So I've been really trying to wrap my head around negative interest rates. And, if you go back and you look at a lot of these economists back in the day, before the interest rates went negative, right? Back in before 2008, 2009, when the first thought of negative interest rates was first hitting the market, economists said there's no way that interest rates will go negative. It's intuitively incorrect. There's no way it can happen. And then Sweden went negative on their overnight lending rate. And they said, okay, well, yeah, maybe the central bank overnight lending rate is negative over in Sweden, but it won't go into other countries. And then other countries started going negative on their overnight lending rate. And they said, okay, well, maybe the central banks might go negative on their interest rates, but sovereign debt, that'll never go negative. And sovereign debt went negative. They said, well, yeah, maybe the sovereign debt, maybe the governments might be able to borrow money and get paid for it, like have a negative interest rate on their bonds, but it'll never get into bank deposits or mortgages or anything. Then Denmark came out and said, hey, we got negative interest rates both on our mortgages, on short-term adjustable rate mortgages, and we got negative interest rates on deposits if you have more than $1 million. So these things that economists said that would never happen are taking place right now. They said that it would never they said that negative interest rates could never happen. They said that they would never be in sovereign debt. They said it was never be in mortgages. They said it was never going to be in deposits. And yet here it is taking place. So I got to thinking, what is this world going to look like if the entire world goes negative? Like everything has negative interest rates. Car loans, credit cards, student loans, everything has negative interest rates. What kind of environment will we be in? And I thought to myself, it was just like, I can understand how a bank can have a negative interest rate on their mortgage, because banks really don't hold on to those mortgages for the duration. What they do is they sell a mortgage to you, get you to sign the bottom line to it, and then they take that mortgage along with a bunch of other people's and they jumble it up and they sell that off as a package. And because the demand for debt is so high right now, because these interest rates are in negative territory when it comes to sovereign debt, investors who are looking for a return are willing to buy just about anything out there that has a debt attached to it. So if it's sovereign debt, if it's mortgage-backed securities, it doesn't matter what it is, even corporate debt that's gone negative, they want that debt. And the reason is because most people, the investors, they're not investors, they're speculators. What they are believing is that interest rates are going to go down into the future, and those assets that they purchased, even though they have a negative yield to them, they'll be able to sell that for a profit. That is the only reason why people are willing to buy negative interest-bearing debt, is because they're speculating on interest rates dropping into the future. So I'm thinking, okay, well, what if you have an environment where everything is negative? Car loans are negative, student loans are negative, credit cards are negative, everything has gone negative. What kind of environment would this be in? Imagine being the owner of a home, and you have a home that you want to sell for $400,000, but there's negative interest rates out there. So you're going to sell this home and get back $380,000 over the course of time. Does that make sense? Does that intuitively make sense to you? No. There's nobody in their right mind would want $380,000 into the future when they can have $400,000 right now. Now, a bank does it because they're trying to get those mortgages so they can group them up and sell that package off. But an individual, it doesn't make sense to you. I mean, to take a negative bearing interest on an item that you sell, it's just intuitively wrong. Unless you sell that house for $400,000 today or $380,000 into the future, but into the future, the $380,000 has a better purchasing power than it does today. Now we got something that makes sense. See, a lot of these economists back in the day, before the negative interest rates hit, talked about negative interest rates being inherently deflationary. And kind of a way one of them explained it is if you had $1 million, and back in the 80s, if you had $1 million and you bought a bunch of government bonds or something like that, you would get paid 4, 5, 6% interest. So you can imagine that if you had $1 million, you would get $40,000 a year just off the interest. But now you got interest rates so low that $1 million might get you, what, $10,000, $20,000? You see what's happening here? That $1 million doesn't buy you as much stuff with the interest rate that it incurs from it. This is what people used to do. They would save their money up until they had a big chunk of it, and then they would live off the interest of it. But now they can't. And if you can't make the money off the interest payment, you have to start diving into the money itself. So this idea of negative interest rates can be inherently deflationary. And there could come a time when the buying power of future dollars ends up being more than it is today. And if that's the case, then it would make sense to go ahead and issue out a negative interest rate, knowing that the money that you get into the future is going to be more purchasing power than you have today. Now we got something that makes sense, right? Uneducated economist. You guys let me know.